the White House has rejected a proposal that Russian President Vladimir Putin put forward for Moscow's investigators to interrogate perceived critics of his regime. President Trump called the proposal, which Putin voiced in response to a question about whether he would extradite 12 Russian intelligence officers accused of hacking the 2016 presidential election, an incredible offer during news conference Monday. Americans who Putin wanted to interrogate, including the former U.S. ambassador to Russia Michael McFaul, expressed astonishment at the proposal. The State Department called it absolutely absurd at a Wednesday news conference. Under pressure to denounce the demand, the White House said Thursday that Trump disagrees with Putin. It is a proposal that was made in sincerity by President Putin, but President Trump disagrees with it, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said. Hopefully President Putin will have the 12 identified Russians come to the United States to prove their innocence or guilt. He said it was an interesting idea. He didn't commit to anything, said White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders when asked about the potential exchange with Putin. As described by Putin, Russian investigators would interview Russian intelligence officers charged in an indictment with hacking into Democratic servers and email accounts. Sanders said the administration would determine whether there is any validity that would be helpful to the process. But she indicated the administration and the president had not committed to it. "We've committed to nothing. It was an idea that they threw out," Sanders said. Share this article. Share is part of the proposal. Special counsel Robert Mueller's investigators could travel to Russia to witness, but not take part in, interrogations of the 12 indicted Russians named in the indictment, Putin said. Russian investigators would do the questioning, an outsourcing of the investigatory process that the FBI does not usually accept. Sanders also acknowledged she did not believe there was a recording of Trump's one-on-one with Putin, making it more difficult to assess anything that might have been agreed to. Browder, who helped push through the Magnitsky Act that is reviled by Putin because of its sanctions on Russians, told Fox News, "POTUS doesn't have jurisdiction over me BC. I'm a British citizen. He'd have to discuss that with British Prime Minister No. Theresa May, and I don't think she'd be too happy about turning me over to No. Putin." Sergei was Browder's lawyer, who died in a Russian prison after uncovering what he said was a multi-million fraud. Putin went after Browder during his side-by-side press conference with Trump, though Moscow. Business associates of Mr. Browder have earned over $1.5 billion in Russia. They never paid any taxes, neither in Russian army in the United States, and yet the money escaped the country. They were transferred to the United States, Putin said. They sent huge amount of money, $400 million, as a contribution to the campaign of Hillary Clinton, he claimed. Browder told CNBC the claim was false. He later tweeted that the Kremlin said Putin meant to say $400,000, although Browder says the correct amount is zero. State-funded Sputnik Russian media reported that Russian prosecutors want to question former U.S. ambassador to Russia Michael McFaul as part of the case against Browder, the former head of Hermitage Capital Management. They also want for questioning National Security Agency Todd Hyman, as well as Svetlana Engert and Alexander Schwartzman, who Sputnik calls Browder's handler. McFaul responded to the idea by tweeting, "Go where? To Russia. I'm banned from traveling to Russia." The Trump administration needs to get on the record right now and push back on these requests. There is no equivalency between the Russian harassment of Bill Browder and the Mueller indictment. Say that now at State Dept, he wrote, using the Twitter handle of the U.S. State Department. Putin responded to the idea of extraditing 12 Russians accused of interfering in the presidential election by having his own investigators interrogate them in Russia. Putin would, however, allow U.S. prosecutors to watch. Putin referenced a joint treaty agreement between the U.S. and Russia and threw out the idea at a bizarre press conference with President Donald Trump, where Trump appeared to accept his strong denial of Russian meddling in the U.S. elections. Putin even said special counsel Robert Mueller, whose team continues to rack up guilty pleas, and announced Monday it had arrested a Russian in Washington, D.C., could send U.S. officials to witness the interviews. He said Mueller could send a formal and official request, and that Russia's own law enforcement would interrogate the alleged hackers, mostly intelligence officers in the G. He pitched the idea when asked if he would extradite 12 Russian spies accused of hacking Democrats during the campaign to the U.S. where they could face trial. "Moreover, we can meet you halfway," Putin said. "We can make another step. We can actually permit official representatives of the United States, including the members of this very commission headed by Mr. Mueller, we can lead them into the country and they will be present for this questioning," Putin said. Trump called it an incredible offer. He offered to have the people working on the case come and work with their investigators with respect to the 12 people. "I think that's an incredible offer." "Okay. Thank you," Trump said. But the Putin proposed another condition that he attached. He brought up William Browder, a financier who crusaded for the Magnitsky Act, which slapped sanctions on Russians, following the death in prison of his lawyer Sergei Magnitsky after uncovering an alleged Ponzi scheme. "For instance, we can bring up Mr. Browder in this particular case," Putin said. Trump also called the idea interesting. "I addressed directly the question of Russian interference in our elections. We spent a great deal of time talking about it. He feels strongly about the issue and has an interesting idea," Trump said. Putin couched his response in the terminology of the rule of law. "There is the issue of trying a case in the court and the final say is for the court to deliver," Putin said. He said they were individuals not acting on behalf of the Russian government or on his own orders, as prosecutors charge. "We are now talking about the private individuals and not about the particular states. And as far as the most recent allegations is concerned about the Russian intelligence officers, we do have an intergovernmental treaty," he said. "Please do send us the request," Putin suggested. "We will analyze it properly and we will send a formal response. And as I said, we can extend this cooperation. But we should do it on a reciprocal basis, because we would await our Russian counterparts to provide us access to the persons of interest for us, who we believe can have something to do with intelligences, he said. Let's discuss the specific issues and not use the Russia and the US relationship as a loose change for this internal political struggle, Putin said.